Now, I'm pleased to present today's camp counselor, RPAG's Senior New Business Development Associate, Luke Vandermillen Jr., to walk us through today's webinar, Benchmarking Spooky Stories Around the Campfire.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, David, for that really kind introduction. And good morning, good afternoon to everyone that's out there. Thank you very much for taking the time to sit down with us today here at RPAG and talk a little bit about the fee benchmarking and RFP resources that you have available to you. So let's go ahead and get started. So I thought it'd be good to kind of level set on, what do we mean by benchmarking? Our industry is chock full of jargon and terms that can mean different things to different people. So one of the things that I want to kind of start off with here is what do we mean by benchmarking? So really when we talk about benchmarking, we're talking about you as the advisor or fiduciary on a retirement plan, evaluating not only the cost of services that your service providers are giving you, but also the quality of those provider services. So here at RPAG, we've always taken the approach of looking at things kind of at a three-pronged approach, looking at fees, investments, as well as services. This three-pronged approach helps you as an advisor monitor and benchmark all the aspects of the plan that are important to not only your plan sponsor, but also the participants of the plan as well. So through the RPAG resources, you have the ability to isolate each of these plan cost components in a different way to illustrate to your clients how your advisory services can help them. What I hope you take away from this summer camp series after the end of these few weeks is the fact that RPAG has such a large plethora of resources that you can utilize dozens of our resources in different situations. We really have something for you for any situation that you're going to face. And also what we want is we want this benchmarking and these resources that we're providing you to be looked at as a value add from your clients that you're presenting them to. So we're always looking for feedback and suggestions on our resources. So if you ever have any feedback or things like that, please feel free to reach out to us. That's how we make our resources better. But taking a step further here into looking at, benchmarking, right? We talked about what we're going to benchmark: fees, investments, and services. Now I want to talk about kind of the two different approaches to benchmarking a plan, right? So the first way to benchmark a plan is looking at a plan based on averages, right? So when I hear the word benchmark, I typically start to think of averages, right? Whether it's an industry average or we're looking at, an average based on, asset size, plan design features, industry, whatever it might be, you can look for an average. Now, typically, resources that involve more averages as opposed to a customized live bid are going to be a little bit easier to run, less time consuming, but won't have the level of information that a customized proposal process would leave you. So our fee benchmarking report includes fee averages, and then we also have resources that go over live quotes from providers. So we'll typically refer to these as RFPs, stands for request for proposal. And this is where you're going to have record keepers or TPAs or whatever service provider you're benchmarking at the time give you a actual quote based on your plans, plan design features, the demographics, the asset size. So really what we want to delineate between is these two kind of methodologies for fee benchmarking, looking at averages and then also looking at proposals from record keepers. And so what we've noticed here at RPAG, and I find this kind of interesting, is that when you're looking at these two different scenarios, you see here on the bottom of the screen, I have a graph that shows fees on the y-axis versus plan assets on the x-axis. And what we've seen with doing provider RFPs as opposed to averages is that usually there's about a 25 to 40% difference in the cost that you're going to see through those benchmarkings. And so if you're looking for very accurate pricing, if you're looking to get really into the weeds and get the most accurate quote from different providers, then you're going to want to go with an RFP. But if you're more looking to, say, contextualize fees for your plan sponsor and give them an idea of kind of where they stand in terms of a benchmark, that's where you're going to want to pull out an averages type report and start looking at, maybe something that's more similar, but not exactly, quotes that are based on your specific plan that you're working with. So we're benchmarking investments, fees, and services, and we can go about it one of two ways, either looking at averages or getting actual proposals from different service providers. So again, when we're looking at investment fees, we're talking about all the costs that are associated with managing investments. So not only is that going to be the investment management fees, you're also going to be looking at revenue sharing, wrap fees, different things like that as well. When we look at administrative fees, we're kind of just bundling together the record keeping, trustee, compliance, any sort of communications fees that the plan's going to be paying. So we're looking at the admin side of things, the investment side of things, and then all of our favorite thing to talk about is advisory fees, right? So what is your client paying you via, flat fee, commission, however you have that set up? And then the last piece here that I really quickly want to touch on is the considerations here. What else do we need to consider when we're benchmarking the fees for a retirement plan? Obviously, we need to benchmark how much it costs, right? Here's our current record keeping costs versus potential other record keepers, what they would charge our plan. We also need to delineate who's going to pay that specific charge. Is this something that's going to be charged to the employees, taken out of their accounts? Is this something that the plan sponsor is going to write a check for? Is it going to be paid out of some sort of ERISA budget? There's a lot of different scenarios and structures that you can utilize when you're talking about who's going to be paying for certain fees. And so that's an important consideration to take into effect, is who's actually going to be writing the check for this service. And so it's important to make sure not only you know how much a service is going to cost, but also who's going to be paying for it. Again, going along that same line, how are they going to pay for it? Is it going to be paid, again, out of participant accounts, writing a check, things like that? And then lastly, kind of what pricing model is best for you? And so when I refer to pricing model, what we're really talking about is, obviously we have our fees that the plan is charged for services, whether it's, record keeping charges, asset-based fees, per participant charges. There's a lot of different fees that a retirement plan can pay. Now, the kind of the joker card that gets thrown in there is revenue sharing, right? So when we talk about what model fits best, we're really referring to is how are the fees structured and what's going to happen with any revenue sharing that's generated within the fund lineup. So one of the things that sets the RPAG resources apart from some of the other platforms that are in our industry is the fact that the RPAG fee calculator is the most accurate in the industry. And you can really illustrate any sort of scenario with the pricing to show, okay, hey, in this scenario, the record keeper is going to retain the revenue sharing. In this scenario, we're going to use the revenue sharing to offset the plan costs. There's a bunch of different scenarios that can happen. So again, not only are we looking at what kind of fees are we paying, we need to look at how much does it cost, who's paying it, how are they paying it, and what model is going to fit your plan the best. And for all my folks out there that I know work with plans like this every day, you know that no two plans are going to be the same. And so one of the other nice things about the RPAG resources is that you can use the resources to illustrate really any scenario that you need to, whether it's a scenario where a record keeper is retaining all the revenue sharing, you're using it to put into a ERISA budget. Like I said, there's dozens and dozens of scenarios that we've seen. Looks like we got a quick question here. We had a member ask if we'll be sending out copies of these slides. Absolutely, we will be. So I'll be sending a follow-up email within the coming days here that will include not only the slides from today, but also a link that will contain the recording as well. So if you want to pass that along to any sort of colleagues that you have as well, you can feel free to do so. So we will be passing along these slides after the presentation today. So let's move away from talking about the fee benchmarking components and talk about what resources we have. So a couple of resources that I want to make sure that you all are aware of before we take a deep dive into each particular one. Like I mentioned in the top left here, we have the provider analysis report. That's going to be your main RFP request for proposal report. If you're looking for accuracy, if you're looking for detail, if you're looking for a report that you can sit down with your client and make sure that you have every piece of documentation necessary to make an informed decision on, are we going to stay with our current record keeper or potentially move to a different one? The provider analysis is the report for you. And we'll get into it in a little bit here, but the provider analysis offers the greatest level of customization, the greatest level of detail for advisors like yourself. So great resource that's been around here at RPAG for quite some time, and something that we love very dearly. The next resource that we have is also the PlanFees Prism suite of tools that we'll get into. And this is, again, more of our annual averages fee benchmarking. So we're looking more on the side of simplicity, efficiency for the advisor, a limited amount of data points needed to put that report together. And really just PlanFees is used as an annual checkup for fees related to both clients and prospects. And then one other thing I wanted to mention as well, that I hope you've seen in some of our recent tech developments, is that we've now added some additional integrations with PlanFees and the fiduciary investment review. So now when you're creating an investment review for your client, you can actually drop in a PlanFees Prism report that you've already created and start the conversation about fee benchmarking. So if you don't want to do a whole standalone report based on fees, or you want to gently wade into the waters of looking at the fees with your client, including the PlanFees Prism report within your fiduciary investment review is an amazing way to do that. And so if you don't have, if you've never used one of these resources, if you're wondering how to use the new FIR integration, please reach out to us here at RPAG. Our advisor service team is the best in the industry here. And, you know, I'm not just saying that because I used to be on that team, but they are truly the best resource that you have available here at RPAG. So if you ever have any questions about, you know, what's available to you, how to utilize certain resources, how to present certain resources, please feel free to give us a call. I'll make sure to include that number within the follow-up, or shoot us an email at support@rpag.com. So our RFP team can help you with utilizing these resources. And then, like I mentioned, we're going to get a sneak peek today of what's coming soon here, the Rfp Express, which again, we're very, very excited about. So if you've been with us here at RPAG, you know that we're very big on building a repeatable and efficient process for anything that you do in terms of servicing your clients and prospects. So this visual here that I have up on the middle of the screen is a quick look at kind of what we look at as the best practice for building a fee benchmarking process. So we'll start here at the very top at high noon and look at, you know, the first piece of building a fee benchmarking process is going to be gathering the fee information, looking at fee disclosures. We here at RPAG really heavily rely on the 408B2 fee disclosure that plan sponsors are provided by record keepers. We've found that this is the most accurate way and the easiest way to view the fees at a plan level. You know, I've worked with a lot of advisors before that also like to use things like the 40485 or even information from the 5500. I'm a believer in, hey, the more information that you have at your disposal, the better. But in my opinion, the 408B2 is always going to be the easiest way to get a breakdown of the fees at a plan level. So we gather the fee information through the disclosures. And then if you all take if you all remember a couple of years ago, the DOL came out and said that if you're a fiduciary on a retirement plan, it's your duty, it's your fiduciary duty to determine fee reasonableness on an annual basis. Fee reasonableness, that's the exact words that they used. Now, the funny thing about that, the DOL coming out and saying that, is that they give no guidance on what is reasonable fees, how to determine what is reasonable. So you as the advisor are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place there, where you say, okay, how do I determine fee reasonableness? That's where our PlanFees Prism report comes in handy, where you're looking to do a quick checkup annually on your client's fees. And you want to compare the fees to not necessarily customized quotes from record keepers, but you're looking more to get an idea of, okay, we're working with a $5 million plan here, and they pay 120 basis points for their total plan cost. Let's get an idea of if that's too high or too low for a plan of that size. And then lastly, every 3 to 5 years, you should be taking your plan out for a live bid RFP. Depending on your plan size is going to determine how often you're going to do that. But the live bid RFP is going to ensure that that your pencil is sharpened as sharp as possible for your client's fees, and also make sure that you're keeping in line with what the market dictates, right? As we continue to go through this era of fee compression within our industry, it's going to be important to understand what the market's going to dictate for different plan sizes by getting customized quotes from different record keepers. Now, in no way am I saying every 3 to 5 years you should be moving a plan to a different record keeper, because we all know the legwork and the administrative work that goes into something like that. So what we're really saying is the live bid RFP should be more of an exercise that's done every 3 to 5 years, again, to ensure that your client's pricing is in line with the market. I look at it a lot like shopping for, car insurance, right? You know what your car insurance currently is, but it never hurts to go get a quote from other companies to make sure that your pricing makes sense for you. And so with this fee benchmarking process, you can ensure that not only you're fulfilling your fiduciary duty by benchmarking fees on both an annual and an ongoing basis, but you're also documenting all these decisions through the RPAG reporting, and making sure that your client is up to date. Yep, and I got a question here. Will I share the source of the DOL guidance to annually determine reasonable fees? Yeah, absolutely. I'll include that in the follow-up that I send for this as well. I'll send that out. So again, just as kind of a review of what we just talked about, right? We have a couple different fee benchmarkings, right? We have our PlanFees Prism report. That's, again, more of our averages, more of our quick, efficient, limited data points, annual checkup. Again, we're looking at industry averages there. And also what we've seen over the last couple of years is that PlanFees, these annual benchmarking reports, have become a really powerful prospecting tool. We'll get into the specifics of that a little bit later, but one of the things that I've seen most commonly through the RPAG network of advisors is that advisors that are consistently winning new business are leveraging that PlanFees report in prospecting situations. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more later in the presentation. Again, I mentioned the live bid RFP every 3 to 5 years. Also good to do it at an onset of a new client relationship to kind of level set and kind of start from scratch. But again, it's not a phenomenal prospecting resource because of the fact of the amount of time it takes, right? When you're putting together customized quotes, the devil's going to be in the details. And so a lot of the time spent with doing these live bid RFPs is reviewing and going back and forth with the record keepers to ensure that all of the information is correct, all the plan assumptions correct, and that all of the information is going to be lined up in an apples to apples comparison. So we have the PlanFees benchmarking and the live bid RFP. And one I haven't quite mentioned yet is benchmarking advisor fees. So this has been a little bit of a conundrum for us in the industry over the last few years, because when you're looking at benchmarking advisor fees, you can't necessarily just look at the price that each advisor charges their clients, because as we all know, there's a huge delineation between advisors and their service levels. You could have two advisors that have the same number of plans, they service the same size of plan, but their service models are completely different. One could be, only doing an annual meeting where they go over the investment lineup. We could have another advisor that's doing, fee benchmarking, fiduciary governance, plan design analysis, along with investment due diligence. So when you're looking at advisor fees, it's tough to put those in terms of apples to apples, but we here at RPAG and PlanFees think we've come up with a really great way to look at things not only through the lens of advisor fees, but at the services that are rendered by an advisor as well. And again, we'll touch on that a little bit more shortly here. So moving on to take our first kind of deep dive into our resource, the first is going to be the provider analysis, which again is going to be our most detailed and customizable report. The provider analysis, which is formerly known as the B3, takes a look at fees, investments, and services, kind of those three big categories that we looked at the top of this presentation here. Now, like I mentioned at the top here, this provider analysis is best used, every 3 to 5 years, depending on the size of plan you're working with. And really what you're trying to do is get the most documentation and the most accurate breakdown of the fees that a plan is paying through a report here. And so a lot of the advisors that I work with who are new to RPAG or are considering using our platform, most of them, when I ask them, hey, what is your current fee benchmarking process? They tell me, they show me their Excel spreadsheet template and show, this really complicated process on how to get the data from Excel into a PowerPoint presentation that they end up delivering to their clients. While that process is very thorough, we believe that it can be much more efficient through our provider analysis. So essentially what this provider analysis allows you to do is actually directly through the RPAG advisor portal. You can send a link to both the current record keeper and prospective record keepers that you'd like to receive quotes from. And all of those record keepers can put their quotes and current plan information directly into RPAG for you. And so what you end up getting, and you can see an example of one of the main pages of the report here on the right side, is you get a true apples to apples comparison of not only the current pricing that you've been charged from your record keeper, but also the competing bids as well. And again, you'll hear me say it over and over again, but the most important thing with these kinds of benchmarkings is going to be that everything is apples to apples. So all of the bidders are assuming the same plan details. They're all looking at the same set of assumptions. And then where the RPAG technology comes into play is that they're going to take all the quotes that the providers have submitted and put it into, again, an apples to apples format here for you to review with the client. The real value and beauty of this report is the fact that it's so easy for a plan sponsor to digest this information. Because if you've tried to take a plan sponsor through a 408B2 fee disclosure, it can be a little bit convoluted and tricky to go over. So having this really nice format to compare, 3 to 5 bidders to your current plan pricing is a really powerful tool. And like I mentioned too, the documentation of this process is going to be really important. So with this report, not only do we have the pricing information that's contained in here, but we also have over 500 qualitative data points. We have over 100 providers to choose from, and you can actually put in your own custom providers as well. And we see almost 5,000 live bids run through the RPAG system per year. So it's a resource that a lot of our advisors heavily lean on and utilize to help make sure that their clients are paying the most competitive fees possible. So if you're not familiar with the report, I just wanted to show you a couple quick housekeeping items with it. This screen here is the initial workflow when you're getting started with running the report. So as you can see from this screen here, there's an infinite amount of customizations that you can apply to this report, whether it's, including the current pricing or deciding to exclude it. customizing how much of those 500 data points you want to include in the report, how much fee information you want to include, if you want to include any things like custom questions or things like that. So this initial workflow is intended to set up the report exactly the way that you want to show it to your client, and make sure that when providers are providing you their quotes, that everything is going to be, again, apples to apples. And then we got to look at this on the other page here, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a zoomed in look again at the kind of side-by-side comparison of the current pricing versus the fees. And one of the kind of hidden gems about this report is, if you see here, we have the current pricing, the incumbent provider. We have all of our bids here from left to right. And then we also have this incumbent rebid here. So what a lot of the advisors that I work with do is, when they run this report every 3 to 5 years, they'll get the current plan information there on the far left, and then they'll take that current plan information and use it to go get proposals from different record keepers. And then what they'll do is go back to the current record keeper and say, hey, we got proposals from 4 of your biggest competitors. They all came in with lower pricing than you. Would you be willing to offer a fee concession here? And there's actually a spot you can see under incumbent rebid where the record keeper can do so. So like I mentioned earlier, this report is not only for when a client wants to move to a different record keeper. It's also a great way to make sure that you're getting the most competitive price from your current record keeper. Looks like we have a question here. What is the best practice if incumbents are not responding to analysis requests? That's a great question. So one of the things that we like to do if we have an incumbent that's not being responsive is to reach out by phone directly to the relationship manager for the plan. So one of the things that you can do through RPAG is store who your relationship manager is at your current record keeper. So when I've had experience running these reports and maybe the current provider is being a little bit slow with their response, I've found a lot of success in picking up the phone and calling the record keeper, especially the relationship manager, directly and say, hey, I'm trying to benchmark this plan right now and I haven't heard a response from you all. Can you either please respond via RPAG, or, to be quite honest with you folks, sometimes if I have a current record keeper that's really dragging their feet, I'll just have that current record keeper send me their documentation and I'll put it into RPAG. It's not the most efficient solution for me. I'd always rather someone else do the work. But sometimes when time is a factor, you do have the option to manually input the plan information and just have them send you the 408B2 or a plan review document or something like that. So great question there, Andrea. Oh, really nice question here. So one of the questions that we have is, any tips on creating a report that encompasses not only what the current plan costs, but the features that I recommend the plan sponsor add to the plan to make it work better? That's a great question. So, and Anna, I'll reach out to you separately here after the call, because I can show you this in more detail. Within the RPAG site, if any of you are familiar with building reports, across the top of the screen for any of your report builders, this is going to be for your investment reviews, the provider analysis that we're looking at here, our fiduciary plan review. There's actually some dashboards, some plan level dashboards that you can add into the report that show, current plan design features, proposed plan design features, and how those are going to affect the current plan. So again, when you're creating a report, either an investment review, a provider analysis, a fiduciary plan review, up at the very top of the report builder, there's going to be a section that says features, and it's going to say documents, investments, fees. And if you click on the one that says plan level, you'll be able to add plan level dashboards to those reports. So again, on a great question, and I'll be reaching out to you individually here after our conversation to show you how to do that here. So again, appreciate the questions from you all. It's already Wednesday, so I'm sick of hearing my own voice. So the more interaction I can get from you folks, the better. So great questions so far here. So continuing on with the provider analysis here, we have, again, as much detail as you want to include in these reports. So, if you want to include this really detailed admin fee detail section where you're looking at not only recurring annual fees, but also, incidental fees, benefits, compliance services, things like that, you can include this feature in your report. You also have the ability to include investment mappings. So if you're looking for a scenario where not only are we going to be looking at changing record keepers, but also overhauling the fund lineup, we have report modules within this report that can show side-by-side fund mapping. And you can see here at the bottom, you can actually show hard dollar savings for your client as well. So another great way to show your value as an advisor and say, hey, not only are we taking your record keeping costs down, we're also taking your investment cost down as well. And then I mentioned those 500 plus provider data points, the qualitative ones. That's our service highlight questionnaire that our RFP team works around the year to make sure it keeps updated from our record keeping partners. So 500 plus data points is a lot, right? And it's not perfect for every single situation that you're going to be presenting this report in. And so what we've added through this plan service highlights section is the ability for you to determine what data points you want to include in the report. So you can see here on the left-hand side of our screen, when we're looking at the provider questionnaire, we can actually select what sections we want to appear in the report. So if we want to look at, things like the provider website details or participant support, you can select those from that drop-down menu there that you see here on the left, and customize that questionnaire to fit exactly what your provider or what your client would like to talk about. So what you end up getting is not 500 data points, but the most important, say 50 data points that your client is going to want to see. So that's your provider analysis, right? And so if you look at that report in totality, it's incredibly detailed. It can be customized in an infinite number of ways. It's a great report to, like Anna said, look at not only the fees, but also incorporate other aspects of the plan, whether it's investment mapping, plan design features, et cetera. And so if you're looking for a really detailed fee report, that's what you're going to want to use right there. Looks like we have a question here. Can we create templates for this report? So if we create it once, we can go back and use the template for future clients. Absolutely. Every report in RPAG is template based. And so you can create a custom template to use for investment reviews, provider analysis reports, plan review reports, and essentially save your customized template so that you're not reinventing the wheel every time you're creating these reports. So absolutely, Kirby, you can save those customized templates. All right, moving on to some of our other resources. I mentioned PlanFees as kind of the annual fee benchmarking solution that we have here at RPAG. So PlanFees, again, in comparison to the provider analysis report, is going to be much less comprehensive, but still provide really accurate, concise, and revealing information for your plan sponsor. So with the provider analysis that I was just talking about, we were talking about, formatting, hundreds and hundreds of data points, whether it's fees, services, investments. What we have with PlanFees here is a limited amount of data points for you as the advisor to input to still get this benchmarking report. And so essentially the way that this PlanFees report works is that you as the advisor will type in the name of your client, the asset size for the plan. So in this case, we're looking at a $5 million plan with 50 total participants. And then you as the advisor get to decide what size of plan that you want to compare this plan's fees to. So again, looking at a $5 million plan, we chose to look at plans between 3.5 and 6.5 million. Again, this is completely customizable by you as the advisor. So you could change this to plans between 1 and 10 million, 2 and 8 million. It's completely up to you and completely customizable as well. And as you can see up at the top here, we have a very robust universe of plans to compare to. So between 3.5 and 6.5 million, we have almost 2,200 plans within the database there. And essentially that the way the report's going to work is it's going to have you input the investment costs, the record keeping costs, and then the advisory costs. And then the PlanFees platform is going to give you a low, average, and high of each of those different fee sections. So what you end up getting is a great report to contextualize these fees for your plan sponsor. So for instance, when we look at the investment cost for this plan, this purple column here is the current plan's pricing for the investment. So they're paying 55 basis points. And you can see the low is 33, all the way up to 56 basis points as the high. So if I was an advisor presenting this report, I would be sure to point out to my client or prospect that, hey, for a $5 million plan, your fees are your investment fees are pretty high. Same thing with the record keeping fees as well. You can see this plan's paying 80 basis points in record keeping. The high is about 78 basis points. So in both of those situations, you can diagnose as an advisor a problem with the plan. And then using other RPAG resources, you can actually present a solution. So, hey, okay, our investment costs are too high. What can we do about it? You can show them you can show your client a fund mapping on here's some funds that we can get you into to lower your costs. It's a great time to introduce the conversation around CITs or passive strategies. Or with the record keeping, if you're working with a prospect, maybe that's a time to ask the prospect, hey, your current advisor, have they taken your plan out to bid recently? Because if not, that's something that we can do for you for a project fee and ensure that you're getting the best pricing available. So this Prism fee benchmarking report, my colleague Jesse Taylor likes to refer to this as an MRI machine that you're running the plan over to identify kind of the pain points within the plan. And then the other RPAG resources like provider analysis, investment review, and the plan review are more kind of the surgical point, the surgical action for the advisor, where they're actually going in and fixing whatever that issue was that was identified through this PlanFees report. Like I mentioned as well, we also have a Prism 365 report that specifically benchmarks advisor fees as well as the services that are rendered by advisors. So with the Prism 365 report, it's going to be the only report in the industry, or the only report that I'm aware of, I should say, that not only benchmarks the fees that advisors are charging, but also the frequency of services provided. So you get a great idea of, okay, for this particular plan, should I be doing an annual investment review, a semi-annual investment review? It's a great way to internally judge your service model. And it's, again, with the other PlanFees report, it's incredibly easy to run and only requires a few limited data points. So I mentioned earlier with using PlanFees for prospecting, I kind of referred to it already here, but I took an excerpt from one of the advisors' reports that I work with, where she did a benchmark for one of her prospects and saw that the record keeping fee was way out of whack here. You can see there highlighted in the middle. And so she ended up charging a project fee to the prospect, about $10,000 to run a project only RFP for them. And she was able to actually get the record keeping fee down to more around 45 basis points. So she ended up saving her client, $20,000 plus just by identifying this problem through the PlanFees report, and then utilizing the provider analysis report after that to actually move the plan to a different record keeper and get better pricing. Lastly here, and again, I really appreciate you folks sticking with me here. I'd be remiss if I didn't give you a sneak peek at Rfp Express, which is kind of the best of both worlds between the PlanFees Prism report, where we're looking at averages, and then the customization and the accuracy of the provider analysis report. And so what we've decided to do is add to the PlanFees suite of benchmarking reports, the Rfp Express report. And essentially what this report's going to allow you as an advisor to do is input a really small amount of data points on the plan. This is an example of one of the input screens here. So again, with that, in line with the other PlanFees reports, very limited data points, easy information to find for you as the advisor. But instead of giving you an industry average in response to this data that you input, what we've actually done here at RPAG is gone out to record keepers and have had them input their, what we refer to as their grid pricing for plans that are under $20 million. So essentially what we have here is a database that includes grid pricing from all the major record keepers, where you put your plan details into PlanFees here into Rfp Express, and say you're working with a $1.5 million plan that has 30 participants. The PlanFees database here is actually going to cross-reference that with all of the grid pricing that we have from record keepers and give you instant quotes based on your plan assumptions. So you can see here, if your quote matches some of the grid pricing that record keepers have provided us, you'll get instant quotes right here that you can put into a report. And then for the providers that you don't match their grid pricing, maybe they don't have a set grid for a plan of a certain size that you're benchmarking, you'll actually be able right through this Rfp Express screen on the right side here to click a button and request an express quote from one of these record keepers. And we have verbal commitments from all of the record keepers that'll be on this platform that they'll be able to respond to that quote within 24 to 48 hours. So again, kind of marrying the best between the simplicity and ease of use of PlanFees and marrying that with the data and the accuracy of the provider analysis to give you this Rfp Express report. And then just to show you a little bit about what this is going to look like in the report, we have, again, it's going to look a lot like the other PlanFees reports, where it gives you a breakdown of what the assumptions that were used to gather these quotes. Just like the provider analysis report, we're going to include a section within the report that gives a brief overview of the service providers, if there's a 316 included, etc. And then this will probably look a little familiar to you folks from earlier in the presentation. We're going to have a fee summary page here that breaks down the bids that you got, as well as you can choose to include a PlanFees average within the report as well. So again, still trying to compare things apples to apples, but again, trying to take a lot of that wait time, a lot of that manual entry time out of the advisor's hands and give you quick and easy proposals through our system. Looks like we have a couple questions here. When will Rfp Express become live? We don't have a firm release date yet, but it'll be coming later this summer here. So we'll make sure to give you plenty of notice. It should be coming up here within the next 8 weeks or so. And then another question, is there an extra cost associated with Rfp Express? Yes, for the PlanFees suite of tools, it does come at an extra cost. So if you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out to me. And that actually leads me into the last piece here, like I promised, is going to be questions here. So happy to take any questions that are at top of mind right now, but also if you notice, I included my email address here at the bottom. So if you want to take a quick screenshot of that, shoot me an email one-on-one. I'd be happy to schedule some one-on-one time with you to sit down, demo any of the resources that I mentioned to you, or show you around what you have access to currently. So let me stop and take a breath there. Any questions about any of those resources that we looked at here? Oh, looks like we have a question here. We have someone in the crowd asking for the PlanFees report. What does the low, average, and high represent? That's a great question. Let me backtrack a little bit here. So when we're looking at the PlanFees reporting, and I mentioned that there's a low, average, and high, what we're actually looking at is the 25th, 50th, and 75th percentile of the data set of the plans that match the benchmark that you selected. So essentially what you get here is kind of a range of fees that the plan's different fee components should fall under. So, for record keeping, the plan should be somewhere between 24 to 59 basis points, things like that. So that's going to be your low, average, and high there. Great question. Looks like we got another question here. Where does the PlanFees data come from? Another great question. The PlanFees data, the data that populates our PlanFees report, is actually obtained through the RPAG provider analysis. The way it works is that I mentioned that through the provider analysis, advisors have the capability to send a link to the current record keeper and have them update their pricing right in RPAG for them. Anytime a record keeper does that and updates real plan information into RPAG, we add it to the PlanFees database. So it's all data that's verified coming directly from record keepers. And it's also up to date as well. We have data from the last 3 years. We only include plans that have been updated within the last 3 years within our database there. So that's partly what makes up this PlanFees database here. Another question, provider analysis, do we have access to it? Most likely, yes. If you have a full membership to RPAG, you'll have access to the provider analysis report. To find out if you have it, if you go into a client on RPAG, just select a client from your list. It's going to take you to that client page. And then if you scroll all the way down to the very bottom of that client page, you'll see that little square at the very bottom of your screen that has the plan asset value right in the middle of it. At the very bottom of that plan card, there should be a button that says fee benchmarking. If you click that, that'll take you through the process of starting a provider analysis report. So most RPAG members do already have access to provider analysis. Well, folks, I really appreciate you taking the time here today to join me for this call. In terms of kind of continuing our summer camp series, next week we'll have another guest speaker who's going to touch on financial wellness through RPAG and utilizing some of our resources. The speaker for next week is one of my favorite people here at RPAG, one of the most handsome people that works here as well. It's going to be me again. So if you're sick of hearing from me, bad news, you got another 45 minutes of me next week. But we'll be touching on all things financial wellness, what resources are available in RPAG in terms of employee education, and how you can utilize our proprietary financial wellness program, WellSense, to effectively roll out financial wellness with your clients. So again, folks, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to join me. And like I said, if there's any questions, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email at lukev@rpag.com, and I'd be more than happy to help you out.